Hey everybody, it's Mike here with No More Excuses. I want to say thanks for tuning in tonight to night number 3 of our 5-part series about Treatment Week. Tonight we're going to feature an awesome guest who was directly involved in Dr. Appel's Phase 1 TREG program at Houston Methodist. As you may be aware, No More Excuses has been calling for immediate access to a variety of new therapies for ALS patients who are alive today. This 5-part series is all about how we could stop ALS right now. I want to be clear about this next statement, and you're going to see the proof for yourself. But in 2021, and frankly in 2017, 4 years ago now, ALS was completely halted in 3 patients. 3 out of 3, that's 100%. Yes, it is a small trial, but to patients like myself and others with ALS, 100% in 3 people to halt ALS is more than good enough hope. So what you're going to hear now is an interview with Sharon Bradley, followed by a discussion of another drug in our series, copper ATSM, or CUATSM. So let's bring in Sharon Bradley now. Hope you all enjoy. Thank you. Sharon, it's great to have you again. We're going to do this Rambo style here, basically. Why don't you just introduce yourself briefly and tell us about Larry and how you found out about the TREG trial, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. You know, timing is everything, as all of us have learned in this disease called ALS. We all know that those first 2 years are just paramount and critical after getting diagnosed. And so Larry was diagnosed in 2015 by Dr. Appel, fortunate to be here at Methodist. And he mentioned to us what he was trying to do with the TREGs and how he thought that approach would work to slow disease process. So as that first year went on, our whole goal was, I wrote Dr. Appel several times indicating my interest in that. And by 2016, Larry was patient 1. There had been 5. People were a little nervous. Larry ended up being patient 1. And we did it all of 2016, that first phase, where they did remove his blood, pulled out those TREGs, multiplied them, put them back in to protect the motor neuron. We did end up having IL-2 shots just to kind of make sure that those TREGs know where to go and what to do.
Okay.
And we saw progression slow.
Okay.
And if you've ever seen Dr. Appel talk about it, look, at the end of the day, progression stopped.
Right. That's exactly right. And actually,
progression stopped.
Yes, on the screen right now, Sharon, I'm showing the video, or excuse me, the picture of the one I like to show the most of the 3 patients. And actually, Larry was one of these 3 lines. We really don't know which line he was, but there was one blue line, an orange line, and then, of course, the purple line. And as people can clearly see here on screen, what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is you can see the slope here as people were declining. And if you remember, Sharon, he took one fast progressor, one medium progressor, and one slow progressor, right? And do you know which one of those Larry was? Was he the slow, fast, or medium progressor? Do you remember?
I think he was the medium.
Okay.
I think. But I do know the fast person passed, not from the T-Rex.
Okay.
But
right. Yeah. So I see, to me, he looks like the blue line here. And guys, when you're watching this, looking at this picture, look at the top blue line here, and you'll notice how Larry was progressing at a certain rate, and then you can actually see how it slowed down, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 dots, which are all in a straight line. Stable. And that's what you want to see, right? Stable. Yeah, exactly. Look,
at the end of the day, we're 6 years in this June, and I guarantee you that by the time we went back in 2017, went ahead and did a second time, it again stabilized him.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. So you actually did 2 kind of...
He did it 2 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. I was not aware of that.
Half years, right? So they do it, and then they watch you progress. So 2016 and 2017.
What was that like for ALS patients out there like myself and others? What was that like to get that feeling, you know, of having halted progression? It must have been amazing for Larry. Did he really enjoy that?
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because all of us know as we learn this disease, and you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And so with him having gotten it kind of early on in his disease. It's only afterwards in 2018 and 2019 where the progression picks up, and you realize how much slower it had been on the TREGs.
Right.
And the more you're convinced this is the way of the future, one of many, but one of the things that I truly believe will be kind of a pivotal point for ALS patients. I really feel strongly, just having lived through it, watched it, worked with that team.
You feel good about the procedure and where it's going?
There's so much on the horizon.
Yeah.
There's so much on the horizon, so much hope that was not necessarily there in 2015.
Okay.
That I see coming about now. And I think the one thing that we all do is we look at these studies and we look at the date.
Right.
Oh, well, that was 2 or 3 years ago and nothing happened. But in this case, it's kind of a good thing that it's been several years because I think things are going to be moving. I can't imagine they're not.
Yeah, the phase 2 trial, I hope to have a little bit more info on that. Didn't quite happen. I had a gentleman I've been speaking with who was in the trial, in the phase 2 trial. It did run into a few problems, which you may be aware of. There was one serious adverse event that caused a little bit of an issue, and I won't get into that too much because that's obviously private information, but safe to say, Sharon, that it did set the trial back, as well as you know, it ran out of funding again a couple of times. Won't go too much into that, but you know, we're choosing to not fund ALS properly right now. This TREG procedure, I'm with you. I think it's one of the most promising treatments that have ever come down the pipe for ALS. And as we get into this, when you and I get finished, I've got some slides I'll show folks to kind of show the development of this drug and how Dr. Appel feels. But actually, I've got a video. I believe this is the video with Larry in it. The one where he's standing there and the camera's kind of looking up at him, and it's the one that has Dr. Appel in it. And I want to go ahead and I want to show this now. And I'm pretty sure it's Larry. I almost am certain it is. But if it's not, don't shoot me. So because I know Larry's watching. So let me run this for everybody right now so you guys can see this. It's a fascinating video. Here we go.
This is the first time we've seen any indication where we give something and rather than slowing progression, we stop progression. And that's very, very exciting.
Okay, now you probably couldn't hear that because it was in my earphone here. So, but that was the video. I believe it was of Larry in the office where where Dr. Appel says it's the first time we've stopped progression instead of just slowing progression. Yeah. And then it shows those little charts, about how it has a downward progression on slope and then it comes back up, or even stabilizes really. And that's a truly amazing moment for ALS, right? To have that level of efficacy. Did these treatments, I'm curious, did they make Larry sick at all? How did he handle the procedures when he went through them?
They did not at all. It was absolutely seamless, beautiful. There's always a risk.
Sure.
And we certainly had our dialogue on the way to the hospital of could something go wrong?
Right.
And we had our kind of end of life discussion.
Wow.
It was dramatic on the way to the hospital, and everything went great. And so it was really a good experience. It was not difficult.
Wow.
A few hours at the hospital, then they grow those Tregs, you go back, and they put them in you. They reintroduce those into your body. And like I said, it is one of the things that I think gives me even more hope is that Dr. Appel has stepped down as the kind of head of visiting with patients and the chair over the Neurological Institute.
Right.
If I'm going to say this correct, I'm hoping I say it correct.
Yes.
And is now making sure that he is completely over the research.
Yeah, that's right. He stopped seeing
totally
patients.
Focusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop seeing them day to day. And frankly, I've talked to people in the pharma industry, and they've all kind of said the same thing. Dr. Appel probably needed a commercialization partner a little bit earlier on in the game, and that might have helped him because it takes a lot of money to develop these drugs, Sharon. You know that. I mean, it's just something that takes tens and 20 millions of dollars. And recently, people have spoken with him about commercialization, and then I think the number that he's given out is close to 20. $20 million to get something commercialized. So it'd be nice, maybe if a Biogen would step up and do that. And in fact, now, Sharon, there's a new trial called the RAPA trial, RAPA trial, and I've got we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the RAPA trial is being done at UMass, or excuse me, Mass Gen, where I went at the Healy Center, and it's actually a TREG trial, which is pretty awesome. So I'm not sure how that worked, if Dr. Appel's involved in that one, or if he's just consulting on that.
I would be surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah,
We've also
me too.
been in contact with Merritt Kudlowitz, who's just such a good friend of Dr. Appel's, and they're close, and I think she may have even trained under him. I'm not sure, but
very possibly.
They work closely together. Dr. Appel's probably got his finger in a whole lot of everything ALS around the United States.
No question. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. He was on, I showed a trial last night of a picture last night of some very early trials for familial ALS, for genetic ALS, and he was on there going back as far as like 1984, 85. I mean, he's been in the game a long time. And
he's got some really good doctors. I wouldn't be saying enough if I didn't say Dr. Jason Donhoff hasn't really been kind of the man behind the scenes in all this research.
Okay.
So they've done really some fabulous stuff, and is pretty. He sold on this, and he really believes in it, and I think he's done a lot to try to push it.
Right. That's amazing. Just briefly, if you don't mind, I don't really. I mean, we talked a little bit about the procedure, but explain the physical procedure before we say goodbye, if you don't mind. Maybe just explain to us how Larry. They call it leukapheresis, right? Plasmapheresis or leukapheresis. How does the procedure actually work?
No different than going in and just pretty much an IV, and they're connecting you and pulling that blood out, and you can see it in the machine. I mean, it's just separating. Then they worked closely with MD Anderson because they had the lab they needed. In fact, worked really a long time, even with a couple of the doctors working on, hey, why don't we have a lab at Methodist? This sharing stuff with MD Anderson was difficult. So they grew those, usually took several weeks. Once they had just hundreds of thousands of them, they put them right back in his body.
Wow.
And of course they know the environment is going to change them back.
Right.
But the whole point is to get as many of those Tregs protecting the motor neuron for as long as possible.
That's right.
What they found is, and if you saw Dr. Appel or heard him say it, everyone who had ALS, the Treg was dysfunctional.
Yes.
And so putting functional ones back into the environment that is already a bad environment allows them to stabilize a patient for so many months. And I think part of the thing that's going to be, part of the trials will be, how many do you need, how long do you need them, and how many infusions?
Right.
That's some of the dialogue that was always discussed.
Okay, because the phase 1 trial was 4 procedures over a year, right? So quarterly, is that right? Is that accurate?
Yes, pretty much.
And so I think one of the things Dr. Appel had said was that people were riding a wave to some extent. Do you agree with that for the most part?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then
didn't know it at the time, but retrospectively, wow, were we riding a wave.
Wow, interesting. So I think the phase 2 trial sought to eliminate that, and it went to monthly injections, right, or monthly leukapheresis. So it tried to stabilize, which in theory makes perfect sense. I think, and then they also changed the trial just a little bit, I think, in terms of some of the medium, some of the actual material that the Tregs were suspended in, and then somebody had a reaction to it or something, an allergic reaction, which can happen. I mean, I don't know that it was due to the changes. We're all speculating here because we're not on the real inside anymore. At least you were. So, which is amazing to get to see that, I'm sure, because the Houston Methodist is awesome, and I would highly recommend, if people are looking for a place to donate. People ask me all the time, who should I give money to? Well, I pretty much now say 2 places in terms of research. It's Houston Methodist, and earmark that money for Treg research. And then also the second thing being, of course, Mass General for the Healy Center. They're doing incredible work. And because here's the thing, and you already know this, Sharon, but no more excuses. We're about finding ways to stop ALS for the now generation. And we'd hope we'd had, thanks to your help for the last 2 years, we'd hope that we would have had a little more results on expediting some of these things. And it's really sad. And we're going to talk more about this tomorrow night or on our final night about how we see ALS in our society. I just don't think we're putting enough emphasis on getting this disease fixed. We can do this. And this procedure, it's clearly safe. It's safe enough. I mean, anyway, at this point, you're living, Absolutely. You and Larry are living proof of that, and it works. I mean, that's the thing. It was 100% effective, and I think people have lost focus on that a little bit. Yes, it was only 3 people. I get it, but all three of those people had a tremendous halting of their progression and the stabilization in their decline, which is incredible. So if we can get better than 100%, I don't know what's better than that, right? I mean, maybe.
You can't. Now, for everyone out there that's listening, and you're dealing with ALS, or you're, as my husband would say, living with ALS.
Living, that's right.
And you're sick, fixed.
Yeah.
And we are now, with the TREGs. Let me tell you something. It is a beautiful life here, and you're always in a different mode of how you want ALS addressed. When we were back in 2016, we wanted ALS slowed down.
Right.
Well, we've already lost everything we can lose except our lovely life. And so now we're looking at different things that can reverse. Where are we with the stuff that reverses?
Absolutely.
So you're different modes of what you're looking for throughout the progression of the disease.
That's a great point. Very good point.
So we're now in the mode of, we hope TREGs helps someone else.
Right.
But we're now looking at what's coming in the future for reversal of damaged neurons.
Well, no question.
Damaged nerves. What's coming?
Great strategy, and perhaps, again, it'll be a combination of all of these things. Because let's be honest, as people know, we never stop progressing. Even when we get to the point of a trait, we still progress. Until we have nothing left. Right. And so, if we can, if Larry could get Tregs again and stop the damage that he's had now. And then there are some exciting regrowth happening. In fact, Dr. Brown just said it last night on a video I played.
Yep.
There are some things, and then I saw an announcement today by Dr. Osdendler about regrowing neurons. Ohio State Wexler has made some progress there. So this battle is not over, and I think Larry has tremendous courage to hang in there and fight. And it makes me mad, frankly, that society is not doing everything we can for ALS patients. This is a ridiculous disease. And the fact that he could have kept going on that treatment, and the fact that it was just about money and the FDA it's unforgivable. And
it's disheartening.
It is.
It's so disheartening.
It really
is. There's so many good people fighting the fight and trying and working hard. And I think that, like I said, the positive in all this is, I feel like telling everyone out there, this is the time. This is the time. We all pull together. We all say, this is the time.
Yep.
There's a real shot here to get something that will be a multifaceted approach, just like AIDS.
Absolutely.
This is exactly what Dr. Appel said. It's going to take more than one thing.
You're right.
But I do believe it's possible, and I do believe it's possible for our people right now with ALS.
It is, because here's the thing. The FDA right now is considering a decision on both Neuron and AMX35. So guys and girls out there with ALS, this is 2021 has to be the year that we draw the line in the sand, because we could stop this disease between those two drugs, and if we add Tregs into the mix, it's a little further down the road, unfortunately, because we went through COVID too, Sharon. That blew everything up for a year. We lost that. That. You just went through it yourself. And
I just got out of the hospital.
Oh my Lord! Oh, and look, you're doing this interview. That's a warrior. But that doesn't surprise me, because I'm showing on the screen right now our visit to the FDA. This was June of 2019. Actually, you sat right next to me, just to the left of me, and then of course right next to Elsie Johnson. As we told the FDA, there's Peter Marks and Janet Woodcock sitting right there across the table, and they were receptive. But the bottom line is, Sharon, is that the FDA is not convinced on the need for doing these things at a level that is and I'm not saying risky at all. I just mean urgent. Just if something is passed.
The urgency was not there.
That's right.
Is not there.
It's not there.
And I'm hoping some of that's changing.
Me too. Me too. Absolutely. Well, keep us up to date.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so
much. I want
much.
to tell everyone out there, don't give up.
Good.
It's a beautiful day and it's a beautiful time. You've got wonderful people that are all fighting, and join the fight. It's a worthwhile fight, and Mike Henson is no slouch when it comes to making things happen.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having us on, and I greatly appreciate you. Larry's been just right here in the background listening to everything, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
Thank you so much, and I'd love to. I'm going to start chatting with Larry. I need to. I understand he's quite the trader, so I need to take up some of that myself right now, and I'd love to catch. I'd love to hear his take on the last week with all this craziness going on. So I'll get into a good chat with him about that. I will. Thank you so much, hon. Thank you so much. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right, folks. There you go. Absolute firsthand evidence and knowledge of the TREG procedure. Let me go ahead and open up my Facebook again here. I hope all that worked, and if not, as always, I have this recording, so I'll make sure we get it all back up, and I'll make it all look nice and pretty. As we began just a short presentation here, that's a huge that was a huge interview. I really apologize for being late tonight, but I really wanted to make sure that we got that in because it's absolutely critical. TREGs is going to be one of those procedures, I believe, that is going to be ultra critical as we go forward in this disease. It seems to have a tremendous power to slow ALS, to halt ALS, and we'll get into some of that now as we come forward here. I want to start by saying again, to recap a couple of these things. Every point matters on the FRS score, guys. Every single point matters, and the reason is quite simple. Each point on reduction, or each point on the ALS FRS score is about a 7% in quality of life decline. That's a lot. So I heard today it was hilarious from our good friend Sandy. She said that of course I'm not going to be able to say it. The way she said it was just awesome. That something about, she said, I'll never climb a stair again. And, that's our measure here. That's our measure. By the way, for the neurone trial, you had to have a 1.25 point improvement. So think about that. There's a very high bar for some of these trials to be set. Although I'll never climb a stair again either. My lower body is pretty much gone at this point, which is why I'm always seated in my videos. I'm not walking around, unless you notice that. But to have an FRS score that is the primary grade of all of our drugs is just, guys, it's just not going to cut it. This is Sharon. I hope that was clear. I think it was during the interview. As you can see, she's a school teacher. They live down in Houston, Texas. And let me tell you, man, she's tough. You deal with kids all day long. And I believe she is middle school or elementary. I cannot remember. Somebody's going to point that out. But she was a warrior, man. She sat right next to us also when we met with ALS Association leadership and asked them some tough questions. So they're just amazing people. They truly are. Let's talk about the TREG procedure just for a moment as we get into this. Again, I believe this is one of the most promising therapies, period, that's out there. It is in phase 2 right now. Actually, it's kind of, well, I'll take that back. It went into phase 2, had some issues. I've heard they're rebooting a phase 2B, I believe. I thought I know a gentleman that was in the phase 2 trial, and he did not have a good result. But it was only an allergic reaction. I know they changed a few things. I still have total confidence in TREGs. In fact, I'm confident that one day it's going to be a huge bonus and a huge way to help slow and stop ALS. As a matter of fact, why don't we just take a quick second and let's listen to Dr. Appel say it for himself. This is phenomenal. You can rarely get a straight answer out of a lawyer and a doctor, right? That's the one saying, and I don't think it gets any more straight up than this. So let's listen.
At the very least, we had hoped that maybe we would slow the process. We actually stopped the progression of ALS in a way that had not been done before.
I mean, guys, there it is. I mean, that's not Mike Henson and No More Excuses blowing smoke. That's one of the greatest ALS doctors that walks this earth. You've got a handful of them. It's hard to say, oh, who's the best, this and that. I have my fan, I'm a fan of several. There's probably 5 that we see and talk about regularly, and Dr. Appel's close to the top of that list. You just heard it for yourself. You just heard it. Everything past this point really is just fluff, because when you can stop ALS in 3 out of 3 people, I mean, I don't know what else to say really. Let's look at this. So how did all of this kind of get going, if you will? Well, let's go back just a little further. Let's look here at Dr. Appel. This is Dr. Appel. So he works at Houston Methodist, as you know. As I said, I think you probably heard that. He's been everywhere and done that. He's a Harvard guy, went to Columbia. He also wears that little bow tie, as everybody knows, and he's been around. I mean, he's been in a lot of trials, even some of these genetic trials. He was involved in those earlier on as well. He was working at first with MDA. He used to be a big MDA guy. I was told that he worked with Jerry Lewis, and it was on the telecast. I was a little young, I never saw those, but his little bow tie stands out a lot, and I was told he worked on the MDA telecast. I don't doubt it, I really don't. But he started with MDA and then worked with a charity called ALS Finding a Cure, which I'm 90% sure is the group that actually was led by the Conair hairdryer family. You remember Conair, the hairdryers? One of their family members had ALS and started a charity and got money to fund Dr. Appel. Dr. Appel is also the one, I believe, who first said ALS is not incurable, it's underfunded. I find that incredibly ironic, considering that this is the man who has completely stopped the progression of ALS. This man says, I'm underfunded, and he's not going to lash out at those who have given him the little bit of money he does have. But we need way more money. My question to you is this: if we have a procedure that's been in trial since 2017 and stopped ALS now almost 4 years ago, why is there still over $50 million sitting in a bank account, right? I mean, if that's not the ultimate insult to ALS patients, frankly, I don't know what is. I mean, this is what we asked the ALS Association when we were in front of them, and they really did not have a satisfactory answer. So going back to TREGs, Dr. Appel's own words, he considers TREGs to be his great hope, the culmination of years of research. He's busy planning a phase 2 trial, which is now, as we talked about, kind of had a little bit of issues, and I'm going to work my butt off to try to find out why for you guys and what's going on. I mean, I know a lot of it, but I just don't want to talk about it because I want to be 100% confident in what I say. But look what he says here. If the phase 2 trial works like he thinks, that might be enough for FDA approval. Guys, could you imagine if we'd have TREGs nearing the end of that trial successfully right now, and everybody was talking about it like they were about AMX 35, and we had approval of TREGs? You heard Sharon say there, Larry had almost no adverse events. It was no big deal. He went in, got an IV, watched the machine spin around. I mean, I have no idea what we're doing here in this disease. Who's working on this? Who's on top of this at the ALS Association, at some of these other, big fundraisers? I mean, who's focusing on this? It seems to me, call me crazy, but that we would focus on the proven therapies that we know work. And obviously we're not doing that. One thing we're going to talk about tomorrow is a little bit more about the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I'm just blown away with that organization. I'm weird like that. I like to do research on other organizations, and if the ALS Association had cystic fibrosis execs, I know they can't afford them because they produce huge results. But guys, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has just blown me out of the water with what they do. They're incredible. Absolutely amazing. So let's look at this. She mentioned on the phone that she was really jittery on the way. There was a big Houston Chronicle article that popped up, and I saw this very early in my own battle. In 2018, 19, I saw this, and this was really what gave me hope the first time. Look down there. One patient got cold feet. Oh man, I can't imagine having gone through that. But basically, Sharon says she got jitters on the drive, and they hoped the immunotherapy would buy Larry enough time, basically to stall ALS until better things had happened, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen. There are other therapies, as we're going to talk about this week, like Neuron and so on and so forth. But the problem with ALS is time, guys. We're all on the clock here, all of us. Even people with slower progression, we're still on the clock, and it's not going to go away. Let's talk a little bit now about funding for this trial, and it's complicated because there's no one definite source of information. Craig Reagan, Sharon Bradley, myself, we all sat across from the ALS Association, and we asked them, how much money did you give Dr. Appel, and why are you not giving him more? This was in the summer of 2019, and their answer was very muddy at best. The CEO also told me it was less than $1.1 million at that time. And then when he applied for a phase 2, that initially it was less than half of that. And then now they have since, to be clear, they have since boosted that amount of money. But we don't know exactly because they like to form these partnerships with other groups. So today, I can't tell you how much money Dr. Appel has received. Clearly it's not enough because the phase 2 trial ran out of money. Somewhere in the middle or around that area, and they asked for an emergency funding request. I don't know the status of that. All that stuff is very hush-hush, but I do know the trial had financial problems. My question is why? I mean, why? Why are we having these issues in ALS to have a working therapy and we can't even fund our trials? I mean, look at this. This is just incredible. Here's what Sharon said again. And Larry, the therapy worked great for Bradley twice, like it did for the study's other 2 participants. He got infusions from January of 16 or to June of 16, and again in January to June of 17. So look at that, a whole year there, like she said, and both times it stopped the progression of his ALS. No lost muscle in his legs, arms, and hands, no lost breathing. During the period he received the cell infusions and for a month or 2 later. And there was no, as she said, there was no provision to extend the therapy. Guys, that's brutal. I mean, that's absolutely brutal. And this is where I think commercialization would have been a really good idea. Can you imagine if a Biogen was behind this therapy with a $40 billion paycheck? You heard Eric Chun last night say that Biogen was paying his way for 3 years, which is incredible. All those trips from Hawaii to San Diego, all paid for. That's the way you do it. Because here's the thing: eventually, when this drug's approved, somebody's going to make billions of dollars off of it, just like they're doing with Radicava right now. They're making billions off of that drug, and I hope and pray that Neuron's approved, and I want them to make billions of dollars as well. Same thing for Amylyx, guys. When we have successful therapies, ALS becomes more successful. Cystic fibrosis became worth $4 billion because of the fact that they got money off of Trikafta. 90% effective drug for cystic fibrosis. They made over $3 billion from one drug. Incredible results. So this is just, again, a little bit more about Dr. Appel. Over the years, his team of researchers have made key discoveries about the immune system's role. So basically think of it like this, guys. There's a theory, and Dr. Appel explains this beautifully on a podcast, or a webcast, excuse me, I'm going to post the link to from Everything ALS, where he spends an hour explaining this. And he actually uses that same house fire analogy that all of us, meaning ALS patients, we have a very severe firestorm, if you will, of inflammation in our central nervous system. And that's a cycle that repeats and it cascades. Once it begins, there's no way to stop it in ALS yet. Well, I mean, there is, but we just can't get to it. And so he was very clear about this. He explained it very, very nicely. And I'll post a link to that chat. I think everybody should watch it because it's incredible what he says. He calls it, quote, a game changer, an absolute game changer. And to be honest with you, people have said, and this is where I've got a slide here, I'll show you, that Dr. Appel was kind of criticized for this drug because he said, quote, that the box was empty and there was nothing left to try. And so they tried it, and that'll be in one of the upcoming slides I have. But Dr. Appel said that the box is, quote, empty. And you remember last night we talked about upstream and downstream therapies. TREGS is a downstream therapy. It addresses issues like, oh, my camera just died. Hang on, give me 1 second here. It addresses issues like inflammation, neuroinflammation in the brain. That's exactly what TREGS does. And that's how it works. And by the way, now I've literally had every single possible failure tonight in my audiovisual system, so there shouldn't be anything left now. Now the batteries died. I couldn't get her on the Zoom, on the video call, so now it should all be out of the way, I hope. And don't worry, again, I'm recording all this. So here's this chart again. I want you to see this. Guys, this is success for ALS. This is what it looks like. 100% success. Look at this. 3 people, they all stopped progressing. That was it. I mean, what else do you want? Now, in fairness, one of the things that we don't know, and Dr. Appel was concerned about, to be totally honest with you, is that when people seem to stop this procedure, they appeared to progress faster than they did. So I guess the solution to that is just keep giving people more treatment. I don't know. That's a concern. I mean, and it could be that maybe they were just catching back up with where they would have been. I really don't know, but that did come up, and he explains that in his, his webcast, and it's a great webcast, by the way. Let me see if there's any questions. Just I could address any. Let's see. Anything? Yeah, Annie says he was on the telethon. Yeah, he came from the telethon, which is good. Let me just keep moving on here, and then we're going to get into the next therapy, which is TREGS, or excuse me, CUATSM. Guys, I don't really a little bit thrown off here. This is the handwritten note I had during the meeting that we had with the ALS Association. That's the amount of money Dr. Appel got first time out for his 2017 trial. Okay. Craig was there. He heard it. Sharon heard it. We all heard it. It's just not enough, guys. It's just not enough. Now, again, to be fair to them, I remember when it was announced how much money that he got for phase 2, people went crazy in ALS. For many of you who are new, this is part of what advocacy does. We protested loudly, and the ALS Association did give him additional funding. He gave more money. This says that he got a funding award for his phase 2 trial. He got additional funding. I don't know how much. And this is part of the other issue. When you do things with other groups like the MDA and also in other groups, you can't find out exactly how much money is being contributed from each group or where it's going. And that's tricky. That's our problem. But it's not enough. Here you can see this. The ALS Association finding a cure, and MDA did a joint grant for over $2.5 million. Now that's over 2.5 years. It doesn't say that it's earmarked specifically for TREGS, but guys, I'm just going to leave TREGS basically with this. I think we've talked about it enough now. You've heard straight from Sharon, and I think the real point that we have to make with TREGS is, why in the hell is this thing not being super funded? Why did we not give Dr. Appel $10 million and let him knock this thing out? At least get it to a point where it could be commercialized immediately in phase 2. Now, I don't know, maybe he didn't want to do that. There's possibility of that, but I do know that that if we have a doctor that can stop ALS saying that he's underfunded, to me that's a signal for somebody like Dr. Appel, who's a very classy guy and who relies a lot on these grants. When he says, look, we're underfunded, to me that's a signal saying, I need more money. And I can't think of, I hesitate to think what would happen if he would have got $20 million 5 years ago. It's just tragic. And why would you not give one of the top 3 or 4 doctors in the world enough money to do something? And along those lines, there is a new trial that's going on at Mass Gen called the RAPA trial. I mentioned this just earlier. This appears to be a second TREG trial, and I'm trying to find out more information about this. Somebody snuck this to me, it's going to be on clinicaltrials.gov. It may already be there. I don't know. I've had this for a while, but in the red box, you can see this study uses your own immune T cells after they have undergone an experimental procedure. This procedure is intended to increase the number of Tregs and Th2 cells. The specialized manufactured T cells are termed RAPA 501 cells. All right, and then down at the bottom, there's going to be 3 total groups. All groups will get the RAPA 501 therapy. All groups. Isn't that amazing? That's awesome. Now, they have never been tested in humans, so apparently this is an early phase. This appears to be an early phase 1 trial, meaning they're going to determine safety here. If I were any of you out there, because I believe in Tregs so much, I would immediately call Mass Gen tomorrow and ask about the RAPA trial. I know there's a lot of visits, and one person told me they were declined because of how far away they were from the trial site. So you need to be somewhat close. I think it's going to be about 23, 24 plus visits. A lot of visits, so you need to be fairly close, and I think they are screening people somewhat based on that. But if you live anywhere, say from Oklahoma East, I mean, I don't know what their cutoff is. They didn't say that, but somebody in California apparently was too far. So call them tomorrow, Mass General, Healy Center, and ask them about the RAPA trial. Because if you can get in that trial, guys, I would not waste any time. I believe that Tregs will be one of the premier products for ALS as we move forward the next decade. It works. I mean, you saw the evidence right there. You can't get any better than that. And so it's incredibly exciting. This is a funny video I'll play before we move on to copper ATSM. But this is a cool video of Dr. Appel getting the Ice Bucket Challenge. This was a while back. And it's sad that he was supporting this Ice Bucket Challenge and then basically got pennies. So here it is. Enjoy this. This is kind of cool.
This challenge. Donate to ALS and accept the ice bucket. So let's proceed.
I crack up every time I watch that. Dr. Appel is he's so smart. Sometimes he's so smart. I've never seen him act like that. It's funny. He's a really interesting guy. I'll just put it that way. I was a patient of his just briefly. He actually did my confirmation diagnosis, and I wanted in that phase 2 trial bad. That's the trial I really, really wanted to be in, and it just didn't work out. I had an opportunity because the trial was delayed because he didn't have any money. I mean, again, the guy stops ALS in 2017 and then doesn't have any money to do phase 2. I mean, you just can't make this up. Anyway, if I talk about Tregs anymore, I'm going to get extremely angry, and I don't want to be angry tonight. So let's move on now. The second therapy we're going to talk about tonight is something called copper ATSM. You'll see it as CUATSM or whatever. This drug was developed by a researcher named Dr. Joe Beckman up in the Portland area, I believe. He's in the Oregon area. And then also it was done in conjunction with Collaborative Medicinal Development. LLC was the commercialization partner, I believe. And then the phase 1 trial was done in Australia. So the Aussies have been working on this for a long time. In fact, one of the researchers named Peter Crouch, that you're going to hear from in just a minute, he actually said this. He said, and this is a quote, "I spend more time over the last 12 years raising money for my treatment, meaning copper ATSM, than actually working on the treatment itself. Now, that's incredible. That's an incredible statement. And there's a new group in Australia that's really kicking butt. It's Neil Danaher. Neil Danaher, I think, he's an Australian rugby or soccer, I think, rugby, I think is what he is. Real famous guy in Australia. And he started an ALS charity. They funded 7 new therapies with $7 million. 7 for 7 is what they did. And one of those was what we're about to talk about now, copper ATSM. This is a powdered substance, and it's extremely easy to make, cheap to make, and you're going to hear that in a minute straight from the horse's mouth. Here's the thing, guys. Look at this. After 6 months, the copper delivery drug, copper ATSM, slowed the progression of the disease in patients by about 70%. That's 70. Now you can see why a drug that's effective, cheap, and it works with that kind of rate, why we would push on that. This was one of the original drugs that we started with 2 years ago. And I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff here. We've got all kinds of stuff on this, so the new folks know where our battle has been with this drug. We wrote letters to the company. We've got a petition, got over 200,000 signatures on it, just at 200,000 signatures now. In fact, why don't we just take a quick look here. This is a video that will give you a really quick background on this drug. I know a lot of you have not seen this, some of you have, but it's called copper ATSM. This drug was originally designed, it's already an FDA approved compound for PET scans for cancer. It was used as a dye, a contrast dye. Believe it or not, it was actually designed to penetrate the blood-brain barrier very quickly, rapidly, within minutes. And that's why it's so effective on ALS. You see, any ALS therapy must be able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And this drug does that very well. And I'll just let you listen to it here firsthand. Here you go.
Breakthrough discovery in Corvallis. It could provide a therapy for people with Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah, as KZI 9 News reporter Rhoda Kraus shows us, researchers at Oregon State have teamed up with scientists from around the globe, finding a potential cure for the fatal illness.
In this disease, these motor neurons start to die one after another until you cannot move a single muscle in your body.
A disease scientists have been working on for decades, trying to come up with some sort of cure.
ALS is known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or also as Lou Gehrig's disease.
A fatal disease that's currently untreatable. But that might change with the help of research being done at OSU.
We're going to make the compound.
A compound called copper ATSM. A compound that scientists say is already extending the lifespan of mice with the disease.
We can take a human gene that causes ALS, put it in a mouse, and those mice develop ALS after 4 months.
What we have right here is the copper solution that we're going to add.
It's one of the easiest ones to make, which is pretty cool that we're not talking
it's real
about
cool.
an expensive biologic product that will cost $100,000. This could be done very inexpensively.
We're going to break up that tissue.
And a way to test the drug.
So this is a mouse spinal cord from a disease-impacted model.
And see how it helps measure mutated proteins in the spinal cord.
Put our microcolumn in line so we can show the impact of the drug relative to control animals.
A promising discovery that could help save thousands of lives.
It's really exciting to actually be able to offer hope.
But at the same time, scientists say so far they've only worked with mice and rats.
We have a lot of hope, but we have to also be patient and understand it may not work.
A hopeful drug that could make a difference, but the discovery is just the first step in a complicated research process.
There are a lot of people that are dying a horrible death, and they're desperate to try it. And the ethics of this are very complex. And what I do not want to do is to give a drug that's going to make them sicker or die more rapidly.
The next step is to try to formulate a drug, but to also make sure that it's safe.
If it does work, we also want to know what are the complications. So actually, I'm a little terrified of what this involves for the next couple of years.
An exciting time for researchers who say they hope the therapy could also help those with Parkinson's disease. In Corvallis, Rhoda Kraus, KEZI 9 News.
Okay, so there you go. That's a fascinating video, isn't it? Right there, you just heard Dr. Joe Beckman. That was Beckman, guy in the burgundy-colored shirt, who, as you'll see in a minute, was asked after we brought this drug forward, and there was a firestorm about it with a 70% efficacy. In an effort to kind of bring everything back and to walk it back, the ALS Association asked Dr. Beckman to do a blog article, which he did, and it's really kind of ridiculous, frankly. He has to come back, and he tried to walk a lot of that back. You heard him say there, quote, "This could be done very cheaply. It's not going to be some expensive biologic that costs $100,000. Man, boy, he's going to regret saying that, I have a feeling, one day, isn't he? And he says the ethics are questionable on this or whatever, because you don't want to give somebody something that's making them die, make them die faster or make them sicker. Well, guys, I mean, that's a double-edged sword, and you'll see as we go through this presentation why that's kind of an issue here, because we know the drug, it was very safe in phase 1, very well tolerated, only about 3 to 5 dropouts out of the total number of people in the trial. It was a substantial number, so they did very well. Here's the original press release. Look at the date on this, January 7th, 19. After the phase 1 trial, they presented their results for copper ATSM at the 29th symposium in Glasgow on 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018. So look what this says here. It's right in the middle. I know it's small. I'll read it for you so you can see it. But it says, quote, reported that over 24 weeks treatment at the recommended phase 2 dose, which was, by the way, 72 milligrams a day, by the way, evaluable patients with sporadic ALS showed a dramatic slowing in the disease progression by the ALS-FRS score of minus 0.29 points per month versus an expected 1 point a month, 1.02, which is about the, quote, average for ALS. And an improvement in respiratory function. This is huge. Look at this. Improvement by 1.1% per month compared to a 2% expected decline. Now, those are seriously powerful numbers, man. I mean, guys, this drug, and as you're going to see in a minute, ALS TDI validated this data. They actually did a study on this to validate it. I know the question you're asking me now is, well, how does this drug work? Well, basically just know this, that it essentially puts copper into the brain, which does several things. It modulates caspase. Remember caspase from the neurone trial? Ever heard of that? Modulates apoptosis, basically, which is cell death. And the short answer a chemist gave me, and the way actually Beckman explains it in another video, is that it replaces a missing copper molecule in the misfolding proteins from an ALS brain, and that's how it works. You're going to hear another statement by the Australian doctors here in a minute on a video that's even better than that. The results around this drug were very, very promising early on. Here's another release. After 6 months, the copper delivery drug, copper ATSM, slowed the progression of the disease by about 70%, so more evidence there of efficacy. This is taken from whatever ALS.ca is. I'm not really sure what this is, but hopefully it's a reputable organization. I don't know if that's the ALS Association California. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But look at that. This is taken right from the press release. Plus 1.1% per month for breathing. And then it slowed progression by about 1/3 of a point per month on the FRS scale versus 1 expected. So, that's good results there. Very good results, very strong. Here's the TDI report where they made a very strong statement, guys, about copper ATSM. Look what they say. This is the first time in 15 years of testing drugs that ALS TDI has confirmed the efficacy of a proposed treatment for ALS that others have published. So, you know, you mind calling me crazy. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. But now you've got to call TDI crazy about this drug. And, you know, good luck with that. I believe that they're totally legitimate. They had a something you could listen to here and dive into. It was done by Fernando Vieira, as you know, who works for TDI, and he's kind of their guy that talks about the drugs and stuff. But here it is right here. It says, in healthy SOD1 proteins, zinc maintains the protein shape, and copper is essential to antioxidant function. SOD1 mutations can cause proteins to become unmethylated, which means they lose that copper molecule. It means they release their necessary zinc and copper components, so they can no longer sustain cellular health. Now, I know a lot of you out there may be saying, excuse me, I thought this was a familial ALS drug. No, it wasn't. It wasn't just a familial ALS drug. It wasn't. The trial had both people in it. Now, they think that because SOD1 is generally associated with familial SOD1 ALS. So it's likely it may be more effective for that variant. But all ALS, as we saw last night, we learned it has an SOD1 malfunction to some extent, superoxide dismutase. That's part of our issue that we have. And look at this. This was true in the trial. People had some gastro issues, but this is a fascinating statement. It says patients with neurological diseases such as Parkinson's experiencing gastro dysfunction such as constipation may be associated with loss of neuronal populations in conjunction with glial cell reactivity within the gastrointestinal tract, right? So treatment of these patients with agents such as metal complexes like copper ATSM may be neuroprotective in the central nervous system. I know I've heard a lot that people have had liver or gut issues before ALS, and I'm still kind of a believer there may be something happening with liver and gut, dysbiosis there, or something's malfunctioning. I've heard and read that there are weird shaped mitochondria in the livers of ALS patients. Like they're strange shapes. So something is clearly happening with mitochondrial dysfunction, and maybe copper ATSM alleviates some of that. Maybe not just in the brain and spinal cord, as that showed, potentially in the gut even. This is, okay, now I'm going to get into something here where we did, I had a story done on me on Fox 23 here, our local Fox station. I'm not going to play that whole thing for you because it's like 5 minutes long. You can see it at ALS News Now. But the reporter, Shay Rozzi, who's done now 4 stories on our battle, amazing lady, and she's helped out so much. But we sent a letter to the CEO of the company, Collaborative Medicinal Development, and actually we sent one to Peter Crouch, Dr. Peter Crouch as well. And here's that letter, and I want to show you the response we got. Let me check to see. Yeah, okay. So, guys, this was a letter that Shay Rozzi sent, and he says, this is Peter Crouch, one of the developers, all the way over in Australia. He says, "Dear Shay, I concur with all that Joe," and that's Beckman, has stated. We have had, quote, "We have had unprecedented success with copper ATSM to date. In comparable head-to-head studies, no other drug has proven to be as promising as CUATSM. This is because we've attacked a line of investigation that most people dismiss with scant regard, and it is the result of many years of work done with due diligence. If we had rushed our work in the lab, it's likely that CUATSM would never have gotten to this point. And now we're at a critical stage of development, blah, 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 where we need to determine where all the rest of this is safe and all this other stuff." Okay, well, you know, they've done that. You know, we know now from the phase 1 trial the drug is safe. Because it was done in Australia, it's been impossible for me to locate really anybody in the trial, which kind of stinks. The next slide is a close-up of Peter Crouch's response. Now listen to this response. This is hardcore right here. He says, quote, "This is the ultimate issue. Most people with a current diagnosis of ALS will not survive to see the completion of clinical testing of CUATSM. I'll spend the majority of today responding to emails like yours, Shay, and those described by Joe. I will be able to state the facts, but I will not be able to provide comfort or hope." Man, that's tough. So, I don't know. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. There's more to that than I can really discuss. But so anyway, let's move on. Guys, there's another drug, as you may know. Here's also, we sent a letter to the Chief Operating Officer of Collaborative Medicinal Development. Kay Noel is her name. She's over here in the U.S., out in California, Sausalito, California. Dear Mr. Henson, my name is Kay Noel, and I'm the COO of Collaborative Medicinal Development. I'm very sorry to hear about your diagnosis. In fact, a key reason we committed ourselves to finding better treatment for ALS, blah, 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 whatever. At this early stage, however, our preliminary results are not yet definitive, and we are not in a regulatory or practical position to be able to offer CUATSM under right to try. All we can do is continue dedicating ourselves to moving this drug forward through the clinical trial and regulatory process as quickly as possible. So there you go again. Now, I want to get back to something for a minute. You guys know that we're fighting for HR 8662. We're fighting our butts off, and that battle will recommence. HR 8662 was made and designed for these kind of issues. If we would have had $20 million for Dr. Appel and something like 8662 5 years ago, ALS could be a totally different disease right now. You see, we're not just a bunch of angry people who are mad about our diagnosis. You know, a lot of us are mad because the correct steps have not been taken over the last 6 years since the Ice Bucket Challenge. Whereas in other diseases like cystic fibrosis and things like SMA, they have been. And MS now, another tremendous win for MS just last week. Big victory for them. And ALS, meanwhile, is bottom of the barrel. I hate to say it. We're underperforming in ALS. There's no other nice way to say it. This was the announcement of the phase 2-3 trial of copper ATSM. It is underway right now. And again, in Australia. I don't have the information on that really as much as I would like to. I wish I did. I'll try to find out more about that. And so here's where Beckman came in. Dr. Beckman came in and kind of walked back some of the stuff he said in that video, because there was such a firestorm about this about a year and a half ago. He came in and said, oh, that, you know, right to try could hurt drug development and all this other stuff, and you know, it was just ridiculous. So in other words, he came in to basically say, hang on, everybody calm down, right? Just got to wait. We got this. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm not really so sure about that. So what we did is we got a petition going, guys. Look at this. And this is old. It says 180 right now. I took this like weeks ago, like months ago. Right now, this petition is about to crack 200,000 signatures. And by the way, we just put up a petition today to try to ask Biogen to provide access to its SOD1 drug tofersen immediately under expanded access. Guys, they have $40 billion in the net worth in that company. And there's about 300 to 500 people with SOD1 ALS, you know, given at any, it's hard to say exactly, but think about that. Let's say it's 400 people. That's 400 people that if given this drug would have a chance at life. Okay, chance at life. That is huge. What an amazing, amazing opportunity that would be, frankly. It'd be incredible. Watch this little short video real quick, the second short video about copper ATSM, and then we'll move on to the end, and I want to take some of your questions. So here we go, watch this one.
A collaboration of scientists here in Melbourne have developed a drug known as copper ATSM that in a phase 1 human trial appears to have slowed progression of the disease.
I don't want to overhype it. Yes, we're very, very happy. The results could not be better.
Professor Ashley Bush from the Florey Institute says it's a significant development in the search for a treatment.
We hope that maybe we've hit the nail on the head, and if we treat early enough, that we might be able to stop it completely from deteriorating. We don't know yet.
In motor neurone disease, brain cells that control movement are compromised, resulting in debilitating muscle weakness, paralysis and respiratory failure within just a few years. For the initial trial, 32 MND patients were given the drug for 6 months. Significant recovery of lung function and cognition has been reported so far.
The disease on average was slowed by about 70%.
70% on average. You just heard it right from the man, right from one of the developers right there. Guys, that's extremely exciting. You know, this is part of why No More Excuses has been screaming so loudly for the last couple of years, it's because, we're choosing this path for us, for ALS. And I think we're reaching a point, thanks to new groups, like I Am ALS and others who have come in to try to change this trajectory. And it's working slowly. But the old way of doing business in ALS was a total failure. There's just no other nice way to put it, okay? I mean, you don't give everybody just enough money to fail. In other words, and we're not the only ones to criticize for this. If I were going to ask you to drive across the desert, I would not give you half the gas you need, because it does no good. You're not going to get where you're going, and you're just going to run out of gas and die. And yet, that is the very strategy that the people who have led this disease and with ALSA have used for the last, forever, really. It's called a shotgun strategy, and we actually called it that in that meeting. And they denied that, and they said, no, and then they make up stuff like, well, it's not our job to fund phase 3, it's not our job to do this. And again, I think this will become more clear. I sound like maybe an angry guy just complaining about ALSA, but you really have to do the research on this. You really have to look at other groups like cystic fibrosis and see how they operate, to see how they function, to really know what it feels like to win, to know what it feels like to have somebody fighting for you, like that Alzheimer's CEO the other night, who begged the FDA, wrote a letter to the FDA saying this is a crushing disease. And really, I know this is an imperfect drug. We want you to approve it anyway. That's what they're saying. Came back with mixed data. And we don't have that in ALS. We have a leadership with ALS Association that fights for drugs that it funds, that it wants done. It does not fight for all drugs. It fights for the ones it wants done, not the ones that we want. This drug, copper ATSM, was not given a dime, just like Neuron, from ALSA National. It was funded with $300,000 from the Oregon chapter. That's it. So after 2014, when we raised all that money for Ice Bucket, to date, it's still absolutely true to say not a single FDA-approved therapy for ALS has been funded by all of that effort, all of it, going all the way back to all those people who dumped ice and water over their heads. I just think that's an incredible disservice to them. I think it's incredibly dishonest. And these drugs, it's not like they don't exist. They're there. We just can't get to them. And I think that's just so terrible. But then again, when you look at the leadership, when you look at the leadership we've had, there was no way that ALS was ever going to be successful, frankly. So I hope that by seeing TREGs, RAPA, and copper ATSM tonight, you've seen 3 drugs now that all are effective, or could be for us. And tomorrow night's going to be amazing. We've got a wonderful dude coming in. Greg Cantor, again, is going to come back and talk to us about his experience with AMX35. We're going to go over that drug and some others tomorrow night. I've got a lot of requests for some odd drugs that, frankly, we have no chance of getting them. So we're going to keep focused here on what the drugs are that we know that are attainable, or that have at least established basic efficacy. I mean, we could talk about drugs that are proposed all day long or whatever, but that's just a waste of our time and your time. People with ALS right now need answers right now. We don't need answers in another 5 years. So we're going to stick to the drugs that we think have promise now and could be done now and which are safe now. So the key word there is now. ALS needs more now. The reason we chose this name for No More Excuses is pretty clear, I think. There's an excuse for everything in this disease. In fact, it really should be called amyotrophic lateral excuses, because that's all it is. It's one gigantic excuse after another. I want to remind each of you too, please go check out, if you would please, our incredible documentary featuring the Stevens, and No More Excuses is in this a little bit. Matt Sennett did a fantastic job doing this. This was the first pass. There will be more. We had so much to do and so little time to get that out. We really needed that out last year. I can assure you the battle is very much ongoing behind the scenes for a number of things right now. We never take our foot off the gas, and because we can't go full throttle all the time. We can't ask you guys to go full throttle at all times. It just doesn't work that way. We will be fighting again for 8662. I'm confident that between you and I Am ALS and even the ALS Association says they support 8662. We're going to find out. I hope they do, but that remains to be seen. We should have already had it passed last session, but as you know, they modified the bill and changed it, so we had to start all over. And yet, you guys still fought to get through. We got 285 the first time, I think, and Michelle will correct me on this. They changed the bill, and then we got another 280 something. I mean, that's amazing. That's what grassroots advocacy does. And as I sign off here, I mean, let me look at some of your questions. I saw one here. Giselle said, do you know the timeline of copper ATSM? Yes, the current status is it's in phase 2 right now in Australia. That's the current status, and it should be getting close to the end, I think, or at least somewhere in that range. I'll try to find out for you exactly, and I'll post it. Mark Bedwell finally decided to show up. I don't know where he's been. Probably playing with Luna, his dog. Let's see. Okay, thank you, everybody. Wow, good comments. Man, this is awesome. This is night 3 of our event. I do apologize for the delay. We had a little trouble there getting up and running, which for me is terrible because this is what I used to do for a living, so there's really no excuse. I will take this video and recut it and edit it so that it's all pretty and that there's no issues. By the way, the first 2 nights are already posted on YouTube. At our YouTube site, it's ALS News Now. If you go there, you can actually see the first 2 nights. Please share those videos. They've been touched up and edited now. I'm actually going to pull the ones off No More Excuses Facebook. I know it's going to wipe out all the comments, but that's okay. I'm going to repost the finished versions without the copyright protection because I know there's a lot of dead air on the front and the back. So I touch them up and I repost them. So those are done right now. You can go to ALS News Now on YouTube and find both of those, and I'll have them on I'll have links to them on No More Excuses Facebook page here pretty soon. I'll also tweet those out. So guys, that's it for tonight. I apologize again for the delay. Let's see, where's our run time right now? It's 9:40. So wow, yeah, we're at about an hour and 20 minutes again. Thank you guys for everything. I'm just taking one last look here. Eric Stevens showed up. What's up, dude? It must be like right after dinner out in California. Yeah, it's guys, it's the usual fighters. I mean, it's amazing that you guys. If we could just get 60% of ALS to do what you all do, you just blow me away with how committed you are to changing this. And I really think it's up to us, guys. We want to grow this group. Please go into the other groups. Don't harass them. Don't stalk them, and don't troll them. We want to be respectful, but please share No More Excuses mission, and not just the same 3 or 4 people. I'd love to see people sharing this, because when we get ready for 8662, if we have 10,000, 15,000 members, guys, it's going to be so much easier to force change. The more members we have, we're stronger together. So if we get up to that 15,000 mark, we can do that. And I mean, I ask for your help to do that. Let's grow this group. Let's grow our power, and then we can really throw our muscle around. So guys, thanks so much. I'm going to check out here, go get something to eat now. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Sharon Bradley for sticking it out tonight and getting through the technical difficulties. I promise next time we'll try not to do interviews with my cell phone held to my chest. So thanks a lot, guys. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.